So a few weeks ago I did a video on how it's been 10 years of Dirty Secretz, 10 years since I put out my first track as Dirty Secretz on Beatport, and that first release was on Spinnin Records. Now I got a whole load of messages after that video asking how on earth I got my first release, very first release as Dirty Secretz on Spinnin Records, and it's actually a really cool story. Did you know it actually started as a bootleg? So it's been 10 years since I first started Dirty Secretz, and my very first release was on Beatport with a remix for Spinnin Records. So how on earth did I get a remix for Spinnin Records as my very first release? Well, it's hard enough getting your track signed when you first start out to any label. Trying to get your music heard is really hard, and you're also still developing, still becoming an artist, still developing your sound. So trying to get a record signed is really hard. Let alone a remix. A remix is even harder because a remix usually only comes from when you've got a reputation and some label asks you to do a remix. So how did I get a remix for one of the biggest labels at the time, Spinnin Records? Well, let's go back a bit because I want to tell you a bit about my history of music production so you can kind of understand how it came about. So when I first started making music, it was because I was also DJing at the time. I wanted kind of unique stuff that I could play in my sets. So I started doing edits and bootlegs of different tracks. What I would do is I'd buy a track from Beatport or Track Source and I'd edit it up so I had something really unique for my sets. I still think it's one of the best ways to learn production because you can start doing stuff straight away. You only have to learn certain bits of the software to be able to do an edit, and then learn a little bit more to do a bootleg, then learn a little bit more to do a remix. You kind of step up in your ability to be able to produce as you're making edits and bootlegs, and all the way along that learning path you've still got stuff that you can play out. So at any point you've got an edit you might be able to play out, or a bootleg you might be able to play out. So you're learning as you go, and that's kind of generally how I learnt music production. I didn't go to any school, I didn't do any online course. There were no online courses when I first started producing. It was just me playing around with software and coming up with edits for my own sets. So that's generally how I kind of came about and started making my own music and my own remixes and my own bootlegs. I just kind of playing around with stuff that I wanted to play in my sets. So what I'd do is I'd usually find a new release on Beatport, something I really liked, maybe it was really popular at the time, or maybe it was a release that I thought was kind of cool but I wanted to put my own spin on it. So I'd buy that release, download it, edit it up, and then create my own kind of bootleg remix out of it. Now this worked really well. It allowed me to be very unique with my sets, and a lot of my sets were filled with a lot of my own edits and some of my own tracks. Now, one of those tracks was a track that was released in 2008 by Dennis Christopher called Set It Off. This came out on Spinnin Records in 2008, and it was a brilliant piano vocal house kind of track. And it wasn't massively popular at the time. It actually came back about 5-6 years later, I think, and got another remix done. But around that time, it wasn't actually that popular. It was a great track, but it wasn't huge. But I really loved it. I loved that track. The piano, the proper old school piano with the vocal really worked for me. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to put my own spin on it. So I bought the original, which had a really great breakdown in it. It had the piano and the vocal together, which I knew I could do something with. So I bought the original, downloaded it, and started editing it up. Now the main reason I was coming up with this edit was because I knew I had a massive gig coming up. I was going to be playing in Brighton in this big club, and I knew that I needed something that was going to be really good for the crowd. I knew the crowd would like a vocal track, and especially a piano vocal track, so I thought this would work really well. So that's kind of why I was kind of coming up with this bootleg. So I started with the piano, and I started with a bit of vocal, built everything around it, my kind of Dirty Secretz kind of drums. Around that time was more kind of tribally kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely I was kind of building up my own sound at that time, and this remix, this edit, this bootleg kind of reflected that. So I did this bootleg, I got it all done, all ready for the gig, and I played it out on the night, and believe me, it took the roof off. It works so well. Now don't get me wrong, not all of my edits, not all of my bootlegs do that, but this one works so well. I basically took the original and turned it up to 11, so it had so much more energy, and it just rocked the room. It worked really well. Now I was playing that remix for a good few weeks after that. I just kept playing it in different gigs, and I was always getting a really good response. So I've got this bootleg, this edit that I've got that I can play in my sets, and that's one of the main things. I always say that if you're going to make a bootleg, make an edit, it's for your own sets. That should be the reason you're doing it. You want to make your sets unique. However, I've got this bootleg sitting around that I'm playing out weekly and it's just sounding so good. It would be a shame for other people not to be able to hear it, and maybe, you know, some other DJs might like it, you know, whatever, something else might happen with it. So I was thinking, what are my choices? Well, when you've got a bootleg or an edit, you've got a few choices of what you can do with it. The first thing is you can go through and you can start sending it to a few local DJs or resident DJs or your mates and everything else like that. Get some local support. Now this works really well because any DJ likes a promo, and especially stuff that nobody else has heard or an edit that nobody else has got. They love it. They absolutely love it. I do it. Whenever I get a nice edit through that nobody else has got, I absolutely love playing it. So you can send it through to local DJs, resident DJs, and get some great support locally. Now this can lead to some really good local gigs and can get your reputation up locally. That works really well. The second option is you can send it to bigger DJs, like huge DJs that are touring the world. They're exactly the same. They love getting these edits through. They like having tracks that people know but a slightly different edit, so they've got some unique spin for their set. And especially if it's something that's exclusive to them or not a lot of people have got it, then they'll love it even more. Now this can work in your favour because those big DJs might have their own record label, or they might run their own nights. They might be able to get you a gig at that night. Or they might even be able to open doors elsewhere. They might know another record label that could help you, and they might be able to open doors elsewhere. Generally, this works quite well if you're kind of giving them something and they give you something back. Generally, that's how the industry works, and most people are quite nice enough to do that kind of thing. If you support them and you help them and you give them these great tracks, then usually you get some nice DJs out there that actually do return the favour. So that can work out really nicely. Now, the third option is a bit more a risky option, and it's the option that I chose this time. I actually chose to send that bootleg off to the original label, Spinnin Records. Now I say this is risky because you're never quite sure how this might go. Now if you've bought that track and you've made your own edit for your own set, there is nothing wrong with that. But obviously they don't want you putting out illegally a remix of one of their tracks illegally, because it's taken away the shine from the original track, and also it's taken away sales from it as well, which is not a good thing. At the end of the day, we should all be quite respectful to record labels and other artists. You don't want to take away from, you know, their track earning money, because they put effort into it as well, just as much as you have. So you've got to be quite respectful in this game. But what I thought I'd do is I'd send it off to the record label to see what they say. Now there's two ways that this can come back. The first way is what happens most of the time, is the record label will probably say, no, it's not really for us, we don't really like it all that much, can you not give it out to anybody? Now obviously you should do that. You shouldn't give it out to anybody because, you know, again, like I say, you should be respectful of the record label, of the original artist, and keep it to yourself. Remember, this is still a bootleg edit that you can play in your own sets, and that's why you created it in the first place. But the second thing that might happen, and is what happened in this case, is that they really liked the bootleg. They really liked the edit that I did, and they sent it off to Dennis Christopher. So he had listened to it, he loved it as well, he gave it a thumbs up, and then Spinnin Records came back to me and said, do you want us to release it as an official remix? And I was like, well, yeah, definitely, I'd love that. And that was my first release as Dirty Secretz. I'd done this bootleg, this edit for my sets. It was only for my sets, and it was only going to be that way. It was only because I got a really good response from it that I thought it could do more. And I took the chance. I thought I'd send it off to them, see what they thought. They'd probably come back with a no. I've had plenty of rejections before, but this time they said yes, they loved it. So yeah, a couple of weeks later, maybe a month later, it came out as an official release, but that actually started its life as a bootleg. So it's been 10 years since that release came back, and I still think back to it now and how crazy that was to actually have that as my first release being on the almighty Spinnin Records. And yes, I suppose there is an element of luck about it. You know, they could have said no to it, they might not have liked it, and when you put these things out there, you're never quite sure whether somebody will like it or not. So yeah, it just worked out well in this case, and I kind of wanted to tell this story because I wanted to show that this kind of path can work. I think still making the edits, making the bootlegs works really well, and I think it's a good way of kind of talking with a label and kind of showing them what you can do, especially if you don't have a reputation at the time. So if you're still still kind of building your persona, you're still coming up with your tracks, still trying to find your sound, it's a good way to kind of get your feet in the door with certain record labels. So yeah, I still think it's a great way, especially to learn how to produce. Definitely making bootlegs and edits is a great way to learn music production software, and you'll just find that more you do, the more you'll learn, the better producer you'll become, and it's just all natural. You're just kind of learning incrementally, but you're still being able to have stuff that you can play at that time. So yeah, it's not your average story of how a track gets signed. The fact that it's my first track as Dirty Secretz to the massive Spinnin Records is just a crazy story, but I wanted to show you, I wanted to tell it to you because I wanted to show you that it can happen, and hopefully it'll inspire you if you like making your bootlegs, might like making your edits, that there is somewhere that you can go with it. So if you make that bootleg, make that edit, and it sounds really good in your sets, then maybe it's worth considering sending it to the record label, and maybe, just maybe, it might get signed and released. It's one of those things, it can happen, it happened to me. So hopefully this has helped you, hope you got something from this video. If you like it, give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, hit the notification icon so you're notified whenever I upload a brand new video. I've got a ton more content like this on my channel, DJing tips, producing tips, check them all out, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.